Man, what an awesome day. Honored that mission's a part of your weekend. Man, I know that there's people that are here for the first time. In fact, I know there's a baby that this is their first experience today. So I'm sure there's a lot of people here experiencing your first time. So welcome to Mission. It's a group of people that are imperfect, but a lot of fun and serve a really good God. I just want to, as I was thinking, as I'm like an 80s and 90s kid, I was born in 77, so grew up in the 80s and 90s. You can't hear a series called Against All Odds without thinking about who? Phil Collins, you're right. So before we just, get into it, I think, Derek, could you just help us out with a little bit of Against All Odds?
I will totally do it. But I need you to sing it with me.
Well, there's no doubt in my mind.
Who wants to hear Hick? Give a honk if you want to hear Mike sing Against All Odds. The people have spoken.
I'll jump in.
How could you just walk away from me? How could you leave without a trace? Come on, take it. You don't know that part?
You go.
When you're standing with you, cause you're the only one, there you go, really knew me at all. I know you know this part. Come on. Take a look at me now. There's just an empty space. There's nothing left here to remind me, just a memory of your face. Take a good look at me now. There's just an empty space, but you coming back to me is against all odds, and that's a chance I gotta take.
Help me thank D. Sorry, I apologize. I'm not a good singer, but we'll go with it. So I hope that gets locked in your mind about what this series is against all odds, against the odds that God throughout history has worked in seemingly impossible situations to make good for his people and the people that are called according to his purpose. So that just gets locked in. Sorry, I can't sing, but Dee's fantastic. So this is one of my favorite stories. We're going to talk about the story of Joseph. It's a character in the Bible and history where God shows off mightily through his life. And it's some stuff that we can learn. But Joseph was a youngest kid. So I'm going to just if you're an oldest kid, if you're the oldest, the one that parents did everything mean to, that they were the hardest on, the one that had the most rules and the earliest curfew and the earliest bedtimes that they tried out. If you're an oldest, honk the horn. Yeah. I'm an oldest. I'm sorry. Yeah, I know. If you're a youngest golden child that got to do whatever they wanted and no one even cared about, you can just honk your horn. Listen to all the spoiled brats out there. That's awesome. There's another group. Who is it? Oh yeah, sorry, middle kids. I forgot you were there. Sorry about that. All right, no. So here we go. So we got Joseph being the youngest, and he's 17 years old, and he gets this dream. And so we're going to fly through the story of Joseph. We're going to fly through history, but I want to kind of lay over some principles of Joseph's life that I think we can learn, because there's hope for every single one of us, and we got to learn these principles. First and foremost, as we're laying this on the top of Joseph's story, is that God has a plan for our lives. He's not bailed. And just because we can't see it doesn't mean that he doesn't have it. In fact, God has a plan for our life. We're going to be convinced of that as we walk through the story of Joseph, that he is good, he is faithful, he is not bailed, he's been working behind the scenes, and he's been working in the future to prepare a way to make you the person that he needs you to be, and with the right gifts and right experiences, right abilities that you need to have when you get there. The second principle that we're laying on top of this is that God's will is way more about who we're becoming than where we go or what we do. Some people are like, well, I don't know, God's will. Is it to wear the blue shirt or the plaid shirt today? I don't know, God. I'm just so confused about your will. Am I supposed to date him? Am I supposed to go here to this school? God, where's your will? Where's your will? Where's your will? I can't find it. It's like a needle in a haystack. Where's your will? Where's your will? Where's your will? And I'm just saying, when you look through the Bible, when you understand who God is and all he's made for us to be, that God's will is way more about who we are becoming from the inside out than where we go or what we do. because you can end up in the right place, but not be the right person when you get there, and you are not in God's will. So God's will has always been about becoming the right person, not just finding the right place. And for Joseph, he's 17 years old, and he gets this master plan of his life laid out for him. And this is how it starts. It starts with a dream. Genesis 37:3-8 said, "Now Jacob loved Joseph more than any of his other children." Okay, this isn't great parenting advice. So again, this is not a parenting talk. This is a how God is against the odds talk. So don't do that. Because Joseph had been born to him in his old age. So one day, he gave Joseph a special gift. Again, not great parenting. A beautiful robe. It could say a Technicolor dream coat. He kind of was flaunting it, and Joseph would flaunt it that he was his dad's favorite. But his brothers hated Joseph because of their father's partiality, and they could not say a kind word to him. Goes on, one night Joseph had a dream and promptly reported the details to his brothers, causing them to hate him even more. "Listen up to this dream," he announced. "We were in the field tying up bundles of grain. My bundle stood up, and then all your bundles all gathered around and bowed low before it. How cool is that? So you're going to be king, are you?" His brothers taunted, and they hated him all the more for his dream and what he had said. So imagine, you're 17 years old. I'm sure you were a really mature 17-year-old. I was not. But if you get this dream, this plan that you think God is laying out for you, and you go, "Guys, I've got some great news. Good morning. How'd you sleep? That's great. God has given me a dream. You're going to want to understand this. It's going to be so cool. Apparently, I'm going to rule over you, and you all are going to bow down to me. It's going to be so awesome. Isn't that cool that God gave me this dream?" And they're like, "Well, excuse me, Your Majesty, can you take out the trash and do the dishes?" And they hated him even more for the dream that they had given him. He couldn't stand it. Have you ever had one of those days or weeks or months or seasons when the people next to you that were supposed to cheer on the dream that God had given you wanted to crush it instead of before it? Welcome to the life of Joseph. Now what I want to do is he gets this plan. This happened, and what happens if we fast forward and 13 years later, from 17-year-old Joseph to 30-year-old Joseph, it happens. So let me just fast forward so you can know the end. I know we'd all like to know the end, but this is the end. Genesis 41 and 40 and 41, he says, "You will be in charge." So this is Pharaoh, most powerful person in the most powerful army of the most powerful nation at the time, says, "You will be in charge of my court, and all my people will take orders from you, Joseph. Only I, as Pharaoh, sitting on my throne, will have a higher rank than yours." Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I hereby put you in charge of the entire land in Egypt." He is ruling the most powerful nation in the country at that time as a 30-year-old. And some of us are thinking like, "Well, God, you're a little bit behind on my 17-year dream. Like when I was 17 years old, I'm about 37 right now, but we can just fast track this dream, and I'll take the 13-year plan to get to where Joseph got." And so you're kind of slowing down a little bit, God, but I need you to kind of hustle up on the plan and the dream that you're giving me so I can get to the place that you need me to be at. And I think what happens is that we forget this. We want the payoff without the process that God has to have us in to get us there. We want the destination of the payoff without the journey that it takes. We want the results of the end without the requirements character-wise it takes to be the right person when we get there. We want the end without the endurance that it takes. We want the role back over here without the route that God would have to take us on to develop us to get there. We want the prestige of the position without the price that it takes to get there. And so this 13-year ride with Joseph is like a roller coaster. Put your arms and legs in at all times, can go like this, and it's whoosh. From when he gets the dream to when he gets the payoff. And this is what happens. So he's got this 13-year plan. We want to get back to the story. And so Joseph's brothers, they hate this 17-year-old kid, daddy's favorite with the Technicolor dream coat. They can't stand him for this dream that God has given him. And all of a sudden, he doesn't even have to work where they work. He gets special privileges because that's what all golden kids get is special privileges. Okay, they all get special privileges, and so he's taking out them. They're all working in the fields, and he's wearing his Technicolor dream coat out to kind of flaunt to them, and he's bringing them snacks, or he's bringing them tools, he's bringing them stuff out, and then they look at him, and there's this pit season for Joseph. It says, "Here comes the dreamer," his brothers said. "Come on, let's kill him," and throwing him in one of those cisterns. And you think you have sibling rivalry going on at your house. I mean, they see the 17-year-old kid coming, and they cannot stand him so much. They're so frustrated with him. They're so angry. They don't want to bow down to him. They don't want him a part of their life. They're like, "Well, let's just kill him." and throw him into one of these cisterns, and we can tell his father, we'll rip up the coat and dip it in animal blood. A wild animal is eating him, and we'll see what becomes of his dreams. We'll never have to serve him or bow down to him. We can't stand the little twerp. And he walks in, and boom, kapow, they take him, they rip his coat, they beat him up, and all of a sudden he's in a pit looking up. And then there's a little bit of mercy because they were just going to leave him to die. And then what happens is that one of the brothers sees dollar signs in his mind. He's like, oh, we don't have to have the guilt of killing him on our hands. Maybe we just sell him, and we all can make a little profit that we split. So then there's this band of gypsies that are going behind the scenes. So when the Ishmaelites, who are Midianite traders, this gypsies, came by, Joseph's brothers had so much mercy on him, they pulled him out of the cistern and sold him for 20 pieces of silver, and they took him to Egypt. Great dream so far, God. Thanks for the gift that you've given me of the plan. And then he gets into Egypt. Genesis 37 through 36. The Midianite traders arrived in Egypt where they sold Joseph to Potiphar, the officer of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. Potiphar was captain of the palace guard. I mean, you got to know, he's like been beaten up by his brothers. He's been left for dead and then sold twice. And he's going, God, where are you? This dream that you've given me so far has been great. I've been beaten up. I've been rejected. I've been thrown in a pit. I've been sold to gypsies. I've been fighting sand fleas all the way on the way here to Egypt. I've been auctioned like some animal on a slave block. I've been bought by some military guy. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life shining his boots. Great plan, God. Like if I was going to do a evaluation of your job performance so far, I would say there's some areas of opportunity in the plan that you've given me and the path that you've had me on. Thank you very much for letting me into this master plan because it's just working out awesome. Ever had one of those days? Weeks, months, years, lives? When what you thought God was leading you to doesn't seem to be ending up the way that you wanted it to go. Well, Genesis 39:2 says this is an important part of Joseph's stories. And those of us that are battling some against the odds circumstances in our lives, these 5 words, the Lord was with Joseph. And I just want you to know, wherever you are, in whatever circumstances you are, whatever rebellion you've had against God, the Lord has not bailed on you. The Lord has not bailed on us. The Lord's promise, God's promise, is that he will be with us. And he won't bail. Genesis 39:34, Potiphar noticed this and realized that the Lord was with Joseph, giving him success in everything he did. This pleased Potiphar. So soon he made Joseph his personal attendant, and he put him in charge of his entire household and everything in it. And I love this part of Joseph's character, that no matter where he was, whatever was put in front of him, he did it with character, like he was working for God and not working for man, because the Lord was with him. And he didn't understand the root that was going on, but he understood that he wanted to be the right person in the midst of all the chaos wherever God had placed him. He was faithful, he was obedient, he didn't gripe, he didn't complain, he was full of integrity, he served authentically, he kept his focus on God and not on the circumstances. He kept looking at God because he knew that God was with him and he knew that he was for them. Potiphar had made him the head of the whole household, head of all of his administrative affairs, and he was being honored by God in that situation, that thing. And then, enter Potiphar's wife. Genesis 39:6 says that Joseph was a very handsome and well-built young man. There's a word study that you can do. It basically means late 40s, balding with a big nose. That's what that means, well-built and handsome. You can do your own word study on that to figure it out, but that's what it is. Potiphar's wife tries to seduce Joseph, and because of the integrity of his life, he won't give in. I mean, he thinks Potiphar has trusted me with his household. He's trusted me with his life. I can't take his wife, but it was bigger than that. He says to her, I just can't do this thing and sin against God. Let me show you what she was saying. She kept putting pressure on Joseph day after day, but he refused to sleep with her, and he kept out of her way as much as possible. And that's what, I don't know what areas are temptation for you, but I know when my world that the enemy keeps day after day after day after day in every single area that I'm weak, he wants to put pressure on me and put pressure on us. And it keeps coming day after day. And I'm trying to keep out of the way as much as possible, just like Joseph, a man of character. One day, however, no one was around when he went in to do his work. She came and grabbed him by his cloak, demanding, come sleep with me. And Joseph tore himself away, but he left the cloak in her hand and he ran from the house. So, side note, when temptation grabs you by the cloak, just run out of the house as fast as you can. So what happens is she's this woman scorned and all of a sudden has this cloak in her hands, and you can imagine what happens when Potiphar comes back in and the rest of the workers come back in. She has to make up this story of how Joseph attacked her, and Potiphar's steaming mad, and Joseph gets thrown in jail. You ever had one of those days, seasons, where you were just trying to do the right thing and you actually were doing the right thing, and you find yourself looking outside of the prison bars of false accusation, where it seems like all the odds are stacked against you? Welcome to the story of Joseph. So we've got Joseph in prison. Genesis 39:21 says, here we go. But the Lord was with Joseph there too. I don't know your story. I don't know where you are, in the highest of highs or lowest of lows. I wouldn't pretend to know. But I do know that we can hold on to the promise and the presence of God, that He is with us there too. He is not bailed. He is for us and not against us. He's got plans for us for hope and a future. We can anchor ourselves to that. He was there with Joseph too, and he granted Joseph favor with the chief jailer. The chief jailer had no more worries after that because Joseph took care of everything. The Lord was with him, and He caused everything he did to succeed. In jail, right there with him, God was reminding Joseph, and He reminds us at our lowest points, I really do have a plan for your life. I really have got a great vision for you. You can't see it right now, but trust me, what I'm developing in you is going to pay off down the road. I really am taking you somewhere. Like, I'm way more worried about who you're becoming, Joseph, than where you go or what you do in this season. And I know you'd probably like to have the end without the root right now. But I'm developing in you stuff that's going to pay off in the end for when you get to where I need you to be, and be the right person when you get there. So Joseph just does exactly what's right in front of him with integrity and character. And he becomes inmate number one, kind of taking care of everything. And then all of a sudden, next scene, cupbearer and baker get it thrown into prison. So basically, Pharaoh gets ticked one day and sends these two guys off to jail. He sends his cupbearer, which is basically like a personal butler. The cupbearer would be the person that they would give all a bit of the king's food to, just in case somebody was trying to poison the king. So it had a big turnaround, if you know what I'm saying, on this job. So they would taste the wine or they would taste the food, and if they died, it was like, oh, good cupbearer, let's get some more food. If they didn't die, then it was like, okay, the king can eat the food. So it's like his personal butler and then his baker get thrown into jail. I don't know if he had a bad day. I don't know if they burnt breakfast. I don't know what happened, but they get thrown in jail. And then all of a sudden, these two guys, the cupbearer and the baker, they dream while they're in jail. And they're like, man, we just had the weirdest dream. And Joseph's like, I know dreams. When I was 17 years old, God gave me this dream. I was going to have this haystack, and I was there. People were going to bow down to me. I was going to be very influential. They're like, dude, you're in prison. Yeah, it's a long story. I know dreams. Tell me your dream. I can help you with it. So they tell him this dream, and long story short, he says, Mr. Baker, I don't know how to say this to you, but you're going to be dead in 3 days. Your head's going to be on a pole. Sorry. Mr. Cupbearer, you're going to be restored back to your position in 3 days. I've got some good news for you. And when you get back, I just got one simple favor for you. My name is Joseph. I'm not supposed to be here. God gave me a dream when I was 17, and He's got a plan for my life. So could you tell Pharaoh, my name is Joseph, and I'm not supposed to be here? And it happened just like Joseph said. 3 days later, baker, head cut off on a pole, cupbearer, restored back to his position by Pharaoh. And can you imagine this, the one small detail that he forgot? Verse 23, Pharaoh's chief cupbearer, however, forgot all about Joseph and never gave him another thought. Ever had one of those days, weeks, years, lives, seasons, when you're going, man, I'm doing the right thing. Does anybody even notice? Does anybody even remember me? Am I just all alone in this? Welcome to the story of Joseph, where God keeps reminding Joseph, I am with you through it all. Then we get to a part right here where the next scene would be Pharaoh dreamed a little dream. And I love how it puts it in verse 1 of chapter 41. 2 full years later, Pharaoh dreamed. 2 full years in prison, wrongfully accused, everybody forgetting about him, just being faithful to what God had put in front of him. I think Joseph in that season had some opportunities to really question God and lose sight of the fact that God maybe did have a really good plan for his life, or was it just bad pizza when I was 17? Like, this dream you've given me, God, he had a chance in that moment to really think that God had messed up his life with the dream that he had given him, but Joseph held true. And I think God is speaking to us that some of us are in the middle of this 13-year journey, and we're not sure how God is going to make good at the end of it, but I want you to know that God is who he says he is, will do all that he's promised to do. He has not bailed on you, and he specializes in rewriting stories and making good and making us the who we're supposed to be, not just the where we're supposed to go in the middle of it. So what happens in 2 full years later? I want to catch up to some of our principles that we want to lay over the story. Remember what we talked about? The first one is that God has a plan for your life. The second one is that God is way more concerned about who you're becoming from the inside out than he is where you go or what you do. The third is that God cares more about my character than my comfort. Shoot. God cares way more about that perseverance from the inside, that love, that joy, that peace, that patience, that kindness, that goodness, that gentleness, that faithfulness, that self-control, the stuff from the inside out. God cares way more about that than he does my comfort. In fact, I think comfort and growth are mutually exclusive. Just like you can't get stronger by being comfortable and not lifting anything, our souls can't get stronger by not doing hard things and being developed by what he wants to do. And God cares way more about my character than he does my comfort. And I learned that from the life of Joseph. Fourth is that God is at work even in the dark. Even in COVID. This is not the hardest thing that we'll ever go through in life. This is not the hardest thing that the church, capital C, has ever been through or is going through on our planet currently. God is at work in the dark, even when I can't see it in the middle of the 13-year plan. Like, God is at work even in the darkness. God doesn't go to bed. He doesn't sleep. He doesn't rest. He doesn't need a nap. He doesn't need an espresso jolt in the morning to get going, an Americano in the afternoon to kind of take the edge off. He doesn't need 5-hour energy to stay up through the night. When my body flops into bed tonight because I'm exhausted, when I close my eyes to rest, God will be up all night orchestrating the events of my life because he works the night shift every night and he loves it. He does not need any rest and he has great plans for my life. And Joseph knew this. Do you? Do I? Because when Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers, God's plan was moving forward. When he was at Potiphar's house, God wasn't caught off guard by all that stuff. When he was falsely accused and he was betrayed and put in prison, God's agenda was right on course. When he was forgotten by the cupbearer, he was not forgotten by God. And when those 2 years, full years passed, the day after day, work in the dark, God was timing the events of his life until just the right time. Pharaoh had a dream. And he's promised that he would do that for us. He's not abandoned you. He's not forgotten us. He never left. And no matter what kind of 13-year or dungeon experience you're walking through right now, God is with you. So Pharaoh dreams, and the cupbearer suddenly remembers. I got a guy that was good with dreams. And he remembers Joseph, and Joseph comes before Pharaoh, and Joseph interprets the dream. I'll go real fast for you. Basically, what it is that, all right, Pharaoh, there's going to be 7 years of plenty. There's going to be 7 years of famine. If I were you, I'm not going to try to tell you what to do because you're the most powerful person in the world. I would probably stock up in that 7 years of plenty because there's going to be 7 years of famine, and you're going to be able to bumper crop season and then not be able to grow anything. So you need to prepare in the 7 years for the 7 after. And Pharaoh said, all right, let's go for it. In fact, I want to put you in charge of that thing. You're in charge of all of it. Joseph is in charge. Egypt is disciplined. It happens just like Joseph said. Remember the fast forward where he arrives at that position and he's the most important person in Egypt except for Pharaoh so that he can tell everybody what to do in those 7 years, and it happens just like he said. like they stock up everything. They have more food than they could possibly imagine. And then the 7 years of famine come and the world is starving. But guess who isn't? Egypt, because the way that God has placed Joseph right there to do for that time, he helps sustain the world and sustain the country. Everyone comes looking for food in Egypt. And guess who comes to Egypt looking for food for their family? Joseph's brothers. And you know who ultimately came? The whole family. And so what happens is Joseph's all Egypt up, he's like all Egypt up with all the stuff he got, so they don't recognize him. And that Joseph's family, his brothers, are brought before this most powerful, except for Pharaoh, person in Egypt. And what you do when you're brought before somebody really powerful in that time, they would make you bow down. And they didn't realize it, but Joseph knew who they were. And I'm like, that's why Joseph's better than me, because I would be like, sweet. This is your worst nightmare. I've got individual pits for you. I've got Midianite sand fleas and a trip for you to take. I've got this guy named Potiphar. You're going to love his wife. I got a jail that I want to throw you in. Like, I've got all this stuff that I want to do. I'd love for you to meet her. But this is what happens. This is the big reveal. Genesis 45, 3 and 8. He says, they're bowing down to him, just like his dream as a 17-year-old. And it says, I am Joseph, he said to his brothers. Is my father still alive? It's like, but his brothers were speechless. Yeah. Because they're like, oh no, we're dead. They were stunned to realize that Joseph was standing there in front of them. Come on over here, he said. I think he had to say it about 20 times. Come on over. I'm Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into slavery. You remember this? And then I love this, it turns, because Joseph knew against all odds that God was with him. But don't be angry with yourselves that you did this to me, for God did it. He sent me here ahead of you to preserve your lives. These 2 years of famine will grow to 7, during which there will be no plowing or harvest. God has sent me here to keep you and your families alive so that you become a great nation. Yes, it was God who sent me here and not you. The fifth Joseph principle I want to put on top of this is that God's plan is always to have his person and his place for his purposes. And I think, you start looking back of all the ways that God has been faithful to Joseph. He's saying this, what's really cool? The immediate purpose of that was to be able to feed the nations for 7 years, but the greater purpose was to be able to preserve the sons of Jacob, so they become a nation of Israel for the purposes of God, for the birth of Jesus Christ, for the salvation of the world. It's cool that in round 1, we needed to make sure that the world could survive, but we don't get to be sitting here at this church. We don't get to be sitting here in this parking lot. If Joseph is not on that throne that day, then the family line of Jesus isn't going to be able to happen. God knew exactly what he was doing. So for us to be able to be sitting here was really important that Joseph was on the throne in that moment, in that day, and God is going I got you. And I love it when a plan comes together against all odds. I am working all things for good. I got you. God is with you against all odds, and you and God are a majority no matter what is going on or no matter what you're facing in your life. Man, I don't know what you need to hear today. I don't know if you're in the middle of a storm or the dungeon experience or the 13-year journey that you're not sure where God is, but the storyline of Joseph is so much proof to us that God has not bailed and he is for us. And I want you to walk out or drive out of here with hope, no matter what your situation looks like, that the work in the dark God has not bailed on you. Why don't you pray with me? God, you are good, and you are great, and you are kind, and you are for us and not against us, and you offer us hope and a future. God, just grateful for your word. I'm grateful for our church, grateful for the ways that you are rescuing people and setting them on mission with their lives. God, give us the courage to trust you in every area of our life. God, we love you. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Matchless in grace and mercy. There is nowhere we can hide from your love. You are steadfast, never failing. You are faithful. All creation is in awe of who you are. You're the healer of the sick and the broken. You are comfort for every heart that mourns. Our King, our Savior forever. For eternity, we will sing of all you've done. Yes, for eternity, we will sing of all you've done. And we sing, God with us, God for us. Nothing can come against, no one stand between us. God with us, God for us. Nothing can come against, no one stand between us. No one. Your heart, come on, let's sing it out. It's your heart, it moves with compassion. There is life, there is healing in your love. You're the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. And for eternity, we will sing of all you've done. And we sing, God with us, God for us. Nothing can come against, and no one stand between us. God with us, God for us. Nothing can come against, and no one stand between us. And where there was death, you saw life, Lord. Where there was fear, you brought courage. And when I was afraid, you were with me. And you lifted me up. Oh, you lifted me up. Where there was death, you brought life, Lord. Where there was fear, you brought courage. When I was afraid, you were with me. And you lifted me up. Oh, you lifted me up. Where there was death, you brought life, Lord. Where there was fear, you brought courage. When I was afraid, you were with me. You lifted me up. You lifted me up. Yeah, you lifted me up. You lifted me up. God, you lifted me up. You lifted me up. We sing, God with us, God for us. Nothing can come against, and no one stand between us. God with us, God for us. Nothing can come against, and no one stand between us. No one, no one. Yes, God, you are faithful. Oh, God, you are faithful. And we will trust you, Lord. Oh, we will trust you. We sing, God with us, God for us. Nothing can come against, no one stand between us. God with us, God for us. Nothing can come against, no one stand between us. Amen. All right, swing wide. Come on, here we go. Swing wide. All you heavens, let the praise go up. Creation, everything with all His children.
Clean hands, pure hearts, good grace, good God.
His name is Jesus. All right, come on, swing wide. Oh, swing wide. All you heavens, let the praise go up as the walls come down. All creation, everything with breath, repeat the sound. All His children, clean hands, pure hearts, good grace, good God. His name is Jesus. Yeah. Oh, 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 swing wide, yeah, swing wide. All you heavens, let the praise go up as the walls come down. All creation, everything with breath, repeat the sound. All His children, clean hands, pure hearts, good grace, good God. His name is Jesus. Sing Jesus, come on. Jesus, and our redemption is our salvation is in His blood. Jesus, a light of heaven, a friend